what is it, third meeting of the Carson City Charter Review Committee. That's June 12th, 2024 at 1 o'clock in the Robert Bob Kroll Boardroom in Carson City. We'll do a roll call at this time.
Chair Staub.
Present.
Vice Chair Hoffman. Present. Member Fagan. Present. Member Hanneman. Member Hart. Member Robinson. Member Wilkie McCullough.
Here.
Quorum's present.
Thank you. Well, let's do the Pledge of Allegiance at this time. Mr. Robinson, do you want to lead us in that?
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Public comment. This public is invited at this time to comment on any matter that is not specifically included on the agenda as an action item. No action may be taken on a matter raised under this item of the agenda. Is there any member of the public that would like to make a comment to the board, the committee at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to action items. Let's see. Let me go look here. 4A. Are we approving the minutes under 4A? Is that what we're doing? So you all have copies of the minutes of our May 13th meeting. Does anybody have any changes or amendments in the approval of the minutes? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Stacy Wilkie, I make a motion to approve the last minutes from May's meeting.
Do I have a second?
Second, Hanneman.
A motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the matters before us. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. Item 5A, discussion and possible action regarding a presentation to the committee on the naming conventions used by the city in designating memorials, statues, and other public places installations. Ms. Hicks?
Thank you, Chairman. For the record, Stephanie Hicks, Deputy City Manager. I also have with me Lindsay Boyer, our Open Space Manager. She's a little more familiar with working through the process, so if you have any questions, we can call her up. She does have to leave at 1:20 though, so I'll try to take you through this efficiently, but feel free to stop me if you have any questions. So at the last charter review meeting, there was a request from the committee to talk about and discuss the city's process for deliberating and selecting names for certain public facilities and places. And so we do get this to go. We do have two resolutions that have been approved by our Board of Supervisors that essentially outline the policies and procedures for naming our Parks and Rec facilities and then also our open space properties. I did include that within the staff report, and so we're just going to kind of run through those to talk about those procedures that are currently in place. For the Parks and Recreation facilities, and there are some consistencies through both of these resolutions, but what we generally are looking for, or what our guiding principles are, is that we're looking for something that is a geographic or a historic name. We also will consider if there's an individual that has provided significant community contributions. That's another way that we do name our facilities. We also involve we involve the public in the selection process, and there's a priority to those that have been unrecognized previously, but there is a process for creating a master list to go from. What the procedure generally is that there might be some direction because a property has recently been acquired, and so we're looking to name it. It's a new property. Or requests can be made to the city manager or to the Board of Supervisors to be brought forward. That is done through a written submission. Oftentimes, we will elicit public input. We've done surveys in the past when we've had open space areas or trailheads, and also park and recreation facilities where we do a survey and we ask for the public's input on naming those specific places. It goes to our Parks and Recreation Commission for review and then recommendation to our Board of Supervisors. When it comes to open space facilities, it pretty much follows that same outline of process and procedures. Our guiding principles, we always want to provide an identity to the property, and we may be looking at the natural landscape, the history, or cultural heritage in order to come up with what that naming convention could be. There were several open space properties recently that we reached out to the tribe on, and they provided us input and some names to include. And actually, I think those names were selected in the process because they had that significance to them. So we also include community and technical experts in that. Once again, individuals or families can that might perhaps have contributed either to the community or to the specific project or property. Sometimes they provide us, donations or endowments, and those are ways that we select names as well. Keeping the public involved in that selection process. So the procedure, very similar upon acquisition, or the department might initiate it if we have some new projects, some new trailheads or other things that we'd like to give names to. Individuals can provide a written submission. It is promoted and we solicit the public input, and then that goes to our Open Space Advisory Committee, and they make recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. So those two resolutions essentially outline our procedures for how we determine names on our public facilities. And we can answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from committee members for Ms. Hicks?
Oh, I'm trying to understand what the scope of, you said open space
Mm-hmm.
in facilities. What if somebody wanted to name City Hall? Would that also follow this procedure? And
While we don't technically have a resolution that is specific to those other facilities, I believe we would follow that same procedure. A written recommendation or request, then it can be brought forward. There probably wouldn't be an interim, like we have the Parks Committee look at any parks, we have open space, look at open space, and then it could be brought forward to the Board of Supervisors.
okay, and as an example, this room
Mm-hmm.
was named after Bob Kroll. Was that process followed?
I believe that it was, but this is a park facility, so it does fall under the parks resolution because the community center falls under the parks.
So the process was followed and that was submitted to the Board of Supervisors? That's how they made the decision?
I believe so. I'd have to go back and double check. I didn't double check that, but I believe it did. The MAC was also named after Mayor Kroll as well. So there were discussions that took place in order for that to happen.
Well, if that's the case, maybe we don't need a change. It sounds like there's a process that is followed.
And Hanneman, and I agree with you. I'm not sure why this is even brought up here today, because I don't see this as being part of a charter. I think it's part of resolutions, which you've had two of, so I think that basically says it all. If you are comfortable with the way it has been going, why not? And within this building, we've got the theater named after Bob Baldrick.
Correct.
We've got this named after, this particular room named after Bob Kroll. And then we have plenty of other rooms in this facility that can be named. So there.
Any other questions from the committee?
I have a comment, not a question, really. It's kind of personal, and I know that we're doing a lot of naming and renaming of things out in the world about honoring Indigenous people. I would love it if there was a pronunciation guide that went with those, because so many of them, you look at these road signs and go, I don't know, even begin to know how to say that. So I know that you probably can't do that on these things here, but just if you talk to people at a conference and they're doing this, and maybe there should be a little guide so we all know how to say it appropriately and respectfully.
And perhaps, we could put some phonetics on our website after those names, so we can look into that for you.
Well, when you tour New England, you're not going to know anything.
Well, I can pronounce Washishu.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or Washoe, right? Didn't they rename the highway on the way to? It's down south here, Washishu. So Steve, you can, if you donate enough money, you can get your name on a room or a building maybe. I have you in mind. Oh, thank you. All righty. So at this time, is there any member of the public who would like to come forward to the committee and address us regarding the naming of city facilities, parks, recreation, open space areas? Seeing none, the matter is before us. I would entertain a motion.
I'd like to make a motion, Hanneman, to not recommend to the Board of Supervisors an amendment to the Carson City Charter to determine how the city selects names for certain public facilities and places as it relates to putting it into the city charter.
Thank you. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the matter is before us. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Matter carries. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Hicks. Next one is item 5B, I believe. This is discussion possible action regarding the scope and responsibilities of the Carson City Clerk Recorder. Mr. Woodbury?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can give just a brief overview of the sort of the legal structure and legal background of this item that the committee asked us to look into. All counties have 3 offices, among others. They have a clerk's office, they have a recorder's office, and they have a public guardian. In Carson City, the clerk's office is addressed in the charter. By addressed, I mean created by the charter and established, and the duties are referenced. There's some additional statutory duties in Nevada revised statutes, but the county clerk is specifically identified as a county executive office in the charter. Same thing with recorder, and in the charter section dealing with the recorder, it actually designates the clerk as the ex officio recorder. So those offices are combined and have been combined since the adoption of the charter. The public guardian office is not referenced in the charter. It is actually created by statute, by Nevada revised statute, and that the statute that creates it, I have the citation here if anybody wants it, does actually identify who will serve as the public administrator in each county. For Carson City, the office of the clerk, which also is the office of the recorder, is designated as the office of the public administrator. I will note that Carson City is the only jurisdiction in Nevada where that is the case. There are other jurisdictions that choose other offices to designate as the public administrator. Carson City is the only one that chooses the clerk's office in particular to serve in that role, or I should say a combined clerk and recorder's office in that role. However, because the designation of the public guardian is done by statute and is not referenced in the charter, I would let the committee know that, as sort of a jurisdictional matter, I think a redesignation of that is beyond the scope of this charter's authority under the charter, or this committee's authority under the charter, simply because it is a legislative designation. That's not to say it could not be changed, and that's not to say it could not be changed through some initiative of Carson City, through a bill draft request or some other mechanism, but it is to say that it could not be legally changed through an amendment to the charter. So with that legal background, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
I have a quick question. Just to clarify, are you using the terms public guardian and public administrator? Are they the same?
I'm using those terms as a mistake because they're addressed in the same chapter, public guardian and public administrator. We're only talking about the public administrator. I misspoke several times saying public guardian. That's actually a completely separate office in Carson City, not under the clerk, not under the recorder. So I thank you for correcting me on that. Public guardian has nothing to do with the clerk recorder's office.
Thank you, Mr. Woodbury. And just to note, for the record, for the public and for the committee, the public administrator is charged with administration of estates of deceased individuals who have not, either do not have a will and they have not appointed any individual to represent them as their personal representative in a state. or they have no relative dependent otherwise that can sit in that capacity. So in order to administer the estate of a deceased person that has no relatives, will otherwise the public administrator administers their estate through the district court via probate process. So I just wanted to clarify that without reading all these statutes in there in 10-point print, which I can't read. So are there any questions from the committee for staff or anyone? Mr. Hone, do you want to talk about it? This was your idea, wasn't it?
Scott Hohen, Clerk Recorder for Carson City. The reason why I brought it up is I thought maybe the Charter Committee might have responsibility over making a change between Clerk Recorder and Public Administrator. Aubrey Roulette, the previous Clerk Recorder, served in this role for 4 years, and one of the reasons probably she didn't continue to serve or run is because of the amount of responsibilities that this office has. Clerk, recorder, public administrator, running elections, marriage, notary. It's a lot. It's a lot for one person. I literally have never worked so hard in my life for so little. I mean, I literally work 12 hours a day. And I care about Carson City, and I want to make sure that I do right by Carson City when my tenure is over. And at some point in time, you know, when the charter was formed in '69, we probably had 5,000 people. Now we have close to 60,000 people. We're going to be adding in another court. Then it's going to grow to 70 or 80. And at some point in time, the clerk, recorder, and public administrator, it's just too much for one particular person. The city did approve me getting an assistant to work on the public administration side. And we did hire that person. I actually hired a person that's got experience from the public guardian that knows what's going on, and she's filling that role. However, in 2024, we're running 3 elections. We've already run 3 mock elections for the state new system with a couple more to come. 2024 is just an overwhelming challenge just on the election side. So that assistant that's on the public admin side for me is spending a lot of time on elections just because we only have 2 full-time people plus myself to run elections. So it's a full plate, and I just want the city, I know Aubrey tried, and at some point in time I could prepare some numbers or statistics or time and motion studies, but the challenge for this office, the clerk recorder, is the pay is set by statute, okay? So that statute hasn't changed since 2018, 2019. The chief deputies underneath me, the clerk recorder, will probably end up making more money this year than me, the clerk recorder, and all the public administrative responsibilities that you have to do. So at some point in time, it's just too much for one person. It really is. And we should just create a path at some point in time to be able to put another person in as the public admin and pay the public admin just like all the other counties in the state of Nevada. You're right, the public admin is more of a probate investigator. I spend more time trying to track down errors. You know, when the mortuaries will tell me that there are no errors or we can't connect with the son or the daughter, well, I'm not going to do anything wrong with laying that person to rest without contacting the heirs so they can make a decision on what's best for them and their family. So it's a lot of investigative work. It's a lot of emailing, phone call. It's a lot. So we're doing it. I'm making it work. It's what I signed up for. And I'm having fun doing it. We're implementing a lot of good changes. But like I say, at some point in time, it's just too much for one person.
Scott, Hanneman here. I have a question for you because you referenced other counties, that we're the only county in the state of Nevada that is doing it this way. How are the other counties getting around it? I mean, many are smaller. We're what, the third largest in the state? So obviously Reno and, Reno and Washoe, and Clark, how are they doing it?
Yeah, Mr. Woodbury can.
But they're
Scott
much
Ho-
larger than we
Yeah,
are too.
Scott Hohen, clerk recorder, Mr. Woodbury can help me on this one, but the other counties have separate designated public administrative roles or responsibilities. So they're all by themselves. Some are elected, some are appointed, from what I understand. When he talked to you about the roles, there are some counties like Douglas that just has a recorder and just has a clerk treasurer and just has, and there's some counties that have clerk, a recorder, a treasurer. And they divvy up their responsibilities even a little bit more.
But is that done through their city charters, or is it done through their city manager, or is it done through the Board of Supervisors, or whatever the county commissioners, or whatever they're called? I mean, that makes a big difference.
I'll leave it.
Jason Woodbury, Carson City DA, for the record. There's a nice chart that was prepared by our city management folks on page 25 of your agenda packet that shows the breakdown of each county and how they assign out the public administrator duties. I can't say for sure, but I believe that all or almost all of the public administrator assignments are made by statute in that chapter 253.010. There's a handful of jurisdictions, and they're smaller jurisdictions that do put the public administrator function into the district attorney's office. Before anybody gets any ideas, those are much smaller jurisdictions, and I think Mr. Hohn's point is well taken. Carson City has grown drastically over the time when these original structures were put in place. I mean, I'm sure there was a time when the clerk and the recorder and elections and the public administrator was a manageable function by one person, but you are drawing a lot on it. I mean, I will tell you from my office, we could not do the public administrator function. We don't have the time, we don't have the people, we don't have the capacity, we couldn't do it. Anyway, I'm going beyond your question. That's where that comes from, is by statute.
Any other questions for Mr. Hone?
Member Fegan. So it's my understanding this is not under our purview, so we cannot help Scott in this matter. Do we have recommendations for him so that we're not leaving this the way that it is?
I don't know. The public administrator function, which is how this was agendized, is a matter that's beyond the authority of this committee, in my opinion. The office of the clerk and the office of the recorder, that is addressed in the charter, but it's not agendized for action, in this particular meeting. But it would not be improper. That's a bad way to say it. It would be proper if the committee were so inclined to address this during the course of its joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors as an item that was considered, that you did receive, a legal opinion that the public administrator office was beyond the scope of your authority, but that whatever else you want to say about that would be appropriate to say.
Any other questions from the committee? Mr. Robinson?
I guess, is it sounds like, as with any elected office, sheriff's office, your office, Mr. Hone, that these are issues to be taken up with the Board of Supes as a budget issue. And then also maybe legislation that would come up in the next session, I guess. But it doesn't seem like it's appropriate for us to make those kind of recommendations, other than, I think, to say that it was discussed and we're sympathetic, but it's really not our charge, I think.
Susan Hoffman, I have a clarification again. So did you say that it's in statute? So to change this for Carson City would take act of the legislature? So we'd have to use R1 bill draft? That's what needs
That's
to change. We need more bill drafts. Okay. Wow.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Hone.
Thanks for listening.
Well, I guess we've been told we can't take any action on this matter, so at this time, I won't need a motion, and we'll let the matter stand as it
Mr.
as
Chair,
it is.
could
go
you
ahead.
ask for public comment just to
Oh, I'm
close
sorry.
that matter out, please?
I don't know why I keep it. Is there any member of the public that would like to come forward, make a comment on item 5B, discussion possible action regarding the scope of responsibilities of the Carson City Clerk of Recorder, specifically the duties and responsibilities of the public administrator? Seeing none, the matter is before us. At this point, we can just leave it go, right? Table it? Okay. So that brings us to the end of the items that have been presented to the committee for possible action. Is there any committee member that would like this committee to address any other issues that are within our jurisdiction? Ms. Hanneman?
Yes, Hanneman, I have been asked, for whatever reason, lately, why we, in the charter, we don't have a stipulation that the city manager is to be a resident of the city. Just about all city managers have been, except for one, and I think that was a mitigating circumstance at the time. But if the city manager does live here, they do have some skin in the game. That's something maybe for consideration, because I looked and there is no stipulation, because it is a staff member. So I don't know, I guess that's under the purview of us or city, the city board, or what?
Jason Woodbury, I would have to look at that. I can't think of any legal restriction why that could not be included as a provision in the charter. But I would want to take a look and be sure of that.
I just recall that
We have a fire alarm going off, so we'll stand in recess at the present time. before 2 o'clock, and I'll reconvene the Charter Review Committee. And I think Ms. Hanneman has a comment to make.
Yes, I was making a comment, so I thought I was at the time that we went out, if you will. So I will finish what my comment was, is that I would like to see this agendized for the future, if I may, because the last two city managers were instructed that they had to live here, and that was Linda Ritter and Nick Morano. So that was one of the bases of their contracts. So I think that really it might be good to have that in our charter review or in our charter, I should say, so that the person who does become city manager in the future does have a buy-in for the community. And I think that's real important. So that's my comment.
So, Member Hanneman, let me clarify. Are you formally requesting a future agenda item based upon staff's indication that they may have to research this issue? And is it your intent to ask this committee to provide a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding where the city manager must live?
Mr. Chairman, if I could jump in, I think we may have some information that might inform that decision a little bit. During the timeout we had, I believe Deputy City Manager Hicks was able to gather some information on.
So it
how
wasn't a
currently
timeout for her then?
Correct.
it was a
We're-
working
we're-
break.
We're always working here at
All
the
right,
city.
well, thank you. Ms. Hicks?
So we did take a look, and there is nothing in municipal code that we readily were able to find within that time frame. But it is within the city manager's contract. The current city manager sent me her contract, and section 11.7 discusses residence, and it says, unless waived by the board for hardship or other extenuating circumstances, Paulson must reside within the jurisdictional boundaries of Carson City, as described in Article 1, Section 1.030 of the Charter, which describes the boundary of Carson City during the term of this agreement. So that's something that has been carried forward within the city manager's contracts.
With the exception of one city manager, post Linda Ritter and pre Nick Morano. So, and I think that was an extenuating circumstance at the time. But, okay, so you're basically saying we don't need it, but there is no resolution or there is nothing within the charter that says that should be part of the city manager's contract. It talks about the city manager in here, but it does not talk about the fact that the city manager should be required. Maybe you can put in extenuating circumstances. I don't know what that would be, because when Miss Ritter came here, she left Elko, and when Nick Morano came here, he left California. And he could have moved, they could have moved anywhere, but they were instructed through the same process that they should live in Carson City, because, as I said, I think you need to live here to understand what this community is and not go home to Douglas or Lyon or Washoe County every day. So, and be part of the community. So that's what I have to say.
Any comments from the committee? Hearing none. Any comments from the public regarding our discussion regarding the city manager being a resident of Carson City? Seeing none, the matters before us. Member Hanneman, do you want to make a formal motion to direct staff to do some additional research and bring this matter back to the committee? Or there is an alternative. In our presentation to the Board of Supervisors, we can merely tell them of your concern, similar to what we're going to do on item 5B regarding the public administrator. What's your passion?
I have a lot of passions. But on that particular issue, the administrator is a state issue. And this is a local issue that can be handled locally. So my intent would be that this would be researched, which you did, thank you very much, and maybe discussed at the board level, before, maybe they feel that it doesn't need to come back, but I think it would be every other job description, basically, there's something in there. So, and I know that to be elected, you have to live in the community. But this is like either the first or second highest job in the city. So, and I know the DA is like even above that, but I just think it is something that should be considered. So, yes, to answer your question in a long way, Mr. Staub, I would like that.
Okay, so at this point, do we need a motion? Do we not need a motion to direct you to do this?
We,
It's not agendized.
we could not take a motion to actually take a position on
No.
behalf of the committee on that.
No.
Um,
Just a motion to direct staff to bring back a report on the city manager. We can't make a recommendation. It's not agendized matter.
Right. So the motion would be to direct staff to prepare some background material for the joint meeting with the Board of Supervisors?
So we can at least get it on an agenda. Or bring the matter back at a future agenda item, but aren't we on a deadline to get this stuff submitted?
We are. We're on a deadline as far as we need to bring our recommendations to the board at the July 18th meeting. So it would be a very quick turnaround if we were to have another meeting for this one item. So that's what our time frame looks like. So
Member Hoffman?
Yes, Susan Hoffman. Earlier, when we talked about the dog pound thing and got that terrible language out of there, didn't we have a conversation about we have one BDR and we're probably not going to use it for this year? So I'm wondering if this can wait till the next round of, I mean, it's a long time, but we could go through these steps, but I think I understood that there probably aren't going to suggest that the changes we propose this year become part of the one BDR that the city gets this year.
However, this is not a BDR, it's not a state of Nevada issue. It is a local issue.
If it's changing the charter, it's a state of Nevada issue. Yeah.
Yeah, charter amendments have to go to the legislature.
Can we do it by ordinance?
You could do it by ordinance. The board could do it by ordinance.
But yet we can still make a recommendation to them, is that correct?
Yeah, I think, it would be legally permissible to put it in the charter. And so the subject itself is within the scope of this committee's authority. But if you wanted to present it as perhaps this is something the board would prefer to put in ordinance and consider that, I think that's within your authority too.
So, Member Hanneman has made I'm going to interpret it as a motion for this matter to be brought back to this committee in order to make or not make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors regarding a change in the ordinances which would require the city manager to be a resident of Carson City. Do I have a second on that?
I'll second it.
I have a
Member
motion,
Fegan.
and I have a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Any member of the public like to comment on the motion? Seeing none, the matter's before us. All those in favor, please say aye. I
Mr.
believe we
Chair,
have-
can I clarify the motion? Is it to bring to this committee at the next meeting, or is it
Yeah.
to, okay, thank you.
Since the matter's not agendized, so
No, I
we have to
understand
get it
that.
on the agenda.
I just wasn't sure whether you guys were just going to bring it to the Board of Supervisors or just discuss it at a future meeting. Thank you.
I did make that suggestion. So we have 3 ayes. Opposed? Nay. 4-3. The matter fails. Sorry, Ronnie.
And our city manager's not going anywhere for a while anyway, but this is just thinking of the future, like Scott.
4-3. 4-3. So since I'm the chairman and I'll be making the presentation to the Board of Supervisors. Robinson, Hoffman, Staub, Wilkie. Okay, are we good? Okay, so can this committee give me authorization to just bring this matter forward to the Board of Supervisors, indicating that this was a concern of the committee when I make my presentation before the Board of Supervisors? Can I do that?
You can do that. You do not need authorization from the committee. You're, as the chair, you're within your authority to identify this as a subject that was discussed, but no recommendations made.
Thank you. Then I will bring it to the board's attention when I meet with them in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks. My pleasure. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our work as the 2024 Charter Review Committee. If there's nothing that's going to come before us further, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, we do have to take the
Oh,
closing
fine.
public comment, and then
I'm
I will
sorry.
get off your back for 2 years.
I know. I keep forgetting that one at the end. Is there any member of the public that would like to approach the committee and discuss any matter that is not agendized today? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Hoffman, I move we adjourn.
Wilkie, second.
Any discussion? All's in favor, please say aye. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for your time.